Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cyber Insanity, a podcast from Goliath Cybersecurity with your host, Andrew Berkuta.
And Angelo Longo.
Today,
And we have with us today
please,
the
Angelo.
great hit it, Nathan.
Wow. Okay. It's all ramped up now. I should be in this three-ring circus. This is awesome. My name is Nathan Knottingham. I'm in North Texas and excited to be on this podcast with y'all. Thank you.
You forgot to point and wink. I'm just letting you know.
There
All
you
right.
go. We're typically
There you go.
and say
Perfect.
howdy.
Yeah.
So
I wish I
Nathan,
could.
thank you so much for joining. And I guess our podcast listeners are going, so who's Nathan and what does he
Right.
do and what's he on the show for? So there's a reason for it. And Nathan, just to tee you up a little bit. So you're very well versed in the mortgage industry specifically, and you got a lot of participation in a lot of things, and you have a
Yep.
lot of knowledge, and we're going to try to extract that on the podcast today. But can you kind of tell us what your kind of your projects are, what you're doing in various different stages of your career and in the mortgage industry?
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all and on this podcast. Cyber chaos, right? That's what we're all focused on. I met you guys through my role as chief of staff and operations at Be My Neighbor Mortgage, where I work with a couple of my partners there, and we are in 26 or 25 states, soon to be 26. We are a brokerage full and foremost, and so we have roughly 30 loan officers and a few ops team, and we're looking to continue to grow that footprint, not massively to be one of the biggest, but just finding people in the places they want to serve others in the community. And so that's how I came to you guys, because I was connected up through another mutual partner of y'all's with my credit guy. They said, "Oh, you should talk to our new partner." And I was approaching you guys about some training mechanisms I was working on, and we'll talk more about that later. But I think the Be My Neighbor mortgage is the one thing. So I started in mortgages as a loan officer for a broker in 2007. I have impeccable timing in the marketplace because shortly thereafter everything went and trickled down. But I bought my first house in 2000. Well, it was 2006, the end of 2006, and so then I joined the industry in May of 2007, and but it was during the buying process. I went, wow, it's actually, you can make money at this, like just helping people identify how to get a loan and teach them how all about lending. And then I
Mhm.
said, this is awesome. So I was in Oregon and I thought I would approach it. So the company I worked with to get my loan was a brokerage, a loan officer I knew there through Starbucks. I was managing Starbucks at the time, and he helped me. And so I talked to the owner there, and he's like, yeah, you'd be great. Come on in. And that's, it gets in your blood. There's a point of this business that just kind of sticks with you. So a lot of the other things I'm involved in are quite literally logical offshoots of that initial startup. So I made it through that lending era for about 4 years. I had my first child, was expecting our second, and I'm like, I need a full-time salary job because 2011 was not a still a great time in Oregon for mortgages. And so we are making it, but we're gonna have to go on one income for a while, and that was just scary. So I moved on, worked some other jobs in management. I worked in a Sprint Nextel, where I got into a lot more of the cyber and what was happening, and managed stores, but was very deep into the cellular methodologies, and they were going through all their transitions at the time. That was kind of fun. And then I worked for a safe in Oregon. It's a workers' comp. It's kind of a quasi governmental job, and I hated it. I hated having to show up every time, every day, working a corner office and not have any freedom. And thankfully, we came to common ideology there that it was not the right role for me. So I left that and started running a chamber of commerce, which was passion of mine and helping other people. And that's where I realized kind of who I was and what I do is I like to help others and help businesses grow. I'm a builder at heart. And so that's just kind of got me through and through. I went to a training company after that, and then vetted VA and here, and so I can walk you all through that later. But I don't want to just talk about the Nathan show. So that's kind of what brought me to y'all, and I think in my last training opportunities with a company in Washington, we dove into cybersecurity. I had the opportunity to fly down to LA and sit down and interview, with the owner of the company. I was in the room while he interviewed Cosmo the God after some of his more nefarious hacking breaches in 2000, well, early 2000s, and that was just eye opening. And I started learning more about the dark web and learning more about how much of my data was already out there, even though I thought I was protected. And went, oh, so it's not a matter of when, it's just how much and who else is touching it. And I was like, cool, that sucks. Okay, now that I know the battlefield, what do I do next? So that's kind of where I started digging in and watching and talking about this and teaching on some of it at a very high level. Nothing like what you all know and are knowledgeable. And yeah, there we are.
So it's interesting that in the mortgage industry, and I'm going back a ways. I also was in the mortgage, but I was the first security director for a company here in Atlanta that was based in Atlanta, that was servicing kind of the Southeast. And one of the scary things that happened, that I heard, was the president saying, "Why do I need all this security? We make dreams come true."
Yep.
You do. You make dreams come true. You mean you do that, but the reality today, and if we kind of look through 2023, there's been some really focused attacks as of late, from a cyber perspective, on the mortgage industry in the financial sector.
Yep.
One main, I think, received and this is in the National Mortgage News. One main was one of these that received an issue that there was penalties imposed because of their short-sightedness on their cybersecurity. I think Fannie Mae was being attacked. On and on. They made the headlines. Doesn't that send chills down your spine a bit, and you scratch your head and going, okay, now what's changed?
It doesn't make doesn't send chills at all. That in 2018, we were doing these continuing education courses and interviewing Cosmo and doing that. We were telling, I was actually on stage at the Association of Residential Mortgage Regulators, right? They allowed me, I had a keynote where I talked about cybersecurity issues. Other presentations, they were talking about document fraud. They were literally talking about taking pay stubs, this isn't a pay stub, and changing the information, right?
Right.
And I'm like, I was like sitting here going, that's not your highest and worst concern. Like there's technology that can tell you that you could scan a piece of technology or a document and a PDF into a piece of technology, and it'll tell you, oh, hey, that handwriting is a little bit different.
Right.
Check it out. Not that it's wrong. That was already done. And I'm sitting there going, they're behind. So what worried me was actually the ability of the marketplace to understand it. And at one point I thought, man, maybe I shouldn't go out and talk so much about this because the evil doers will know what we're focusing on. And then it dawned on me, they already do.
They already
And they
do.
don't care. Like they're evildoers. They're already they're more knowledgeable about this than I am because that's what they're focused on. That's their business, their bread and butter. And so I started just thinking, oh, well, we just need to talk about this. We need to raise the level of awareness and say, it's not if, it's when, and it's not how bad, it's how much. It's always bad. It's just how much of it did they get? And it's
Right.
not if will they,
Right.
it's just when are they going to actually make the breach? And some of my favorite stories we would talk about then were the casinos hacked through the fish tank, right? We talked about a technical there was a high, I want to say it was a defense contractor hacked through a local Chinese restaurant's PDF menu, right? And so
Wow.
you get creative about this process and you go, hey, if they're going to be creative about it, we've gone so far away from the emails when I was on AOL and Hotmail of like, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince, send me your address and your phone number so I can send you this money that belongs to you. Like, not me, sucker.
Yeah. They're getting a
We've
lot
got
more
so far
clever.
away. Things are so much more clever now. And honestly, COVID, while it was a boon for the opportunity of us to work remotely, have these great conversations, do this, technology advanced quickly based on demand of we need to do business. Well, it also changed in the marketplace and the mortgages where I'm doing loans for people I will never shake their hand. And that bothers me to a degree where I'm even like demanding, hey, I need to get on camera with you. I want to see you. I want
Yeah.
to talk to you because this is really important. Oh, well, we're not comfortable with that. I've turned down a couple loans where I just got too many of those willy, that feels weird. Like, get on camera. Oh, we don't want to. Why not? Like,
Yeah.
why not? Like, this is important. So, does it scare me, the headlines? No, I think it's a good wake-up call. Unfortunately, I just am worried about the number of people that will be drastically harmed over this. And what do we do to get around that and get through that? Not around it, but I should say get through that compliantly and set up boundaries and structure in the future.
So three areas, I guess, when I was in the mortgage industry, and again, this is going back a ways. One, a person you're servicing a person or a group of people in a mortgage. That's the direct lending. There's the other piece where you work with partners or associations. And then if you're originating loans and then you sell those off, then you have a partner network where you can sell those off. Is that still the case? Are we missing one of those areas? Is there a fourth area that that could be a potential area of focus for a hacker to exploit?
Well, I think the exploitation doesn't happen in those main areas. Those main areas know what they're handling. It's the third party areas, the transfer of data between those two areas where the exploitation is going to happen. I mean, that's
Yep.
I did not serve in the military, but my business partner is military. We've built up a training company to support military members, and so I have thankfully learned some ideas and some training, and I've sat in some great courses with some special operations people and some Marines that were logistics, and they would talk about it. It wasn't base to base. It wasn't the bases that were most at risk. It was always the transition of goods between the two. And you have to think about that in the same with data packets and all the information we're using. We could use all the acronyms about your CISO world, and most of the world's eyes would glaze over and go, I have no idea what that stands for. Why do I care? The
Right.
reality is this: I have a thing and I'm about to give it to Angelo, and I have to pass that through a channel of services. Those channel of services is the risk. That is the weakest link of our conversation. I could trust Angelo with my life, but I don't know who can see all the information between the two. And we're like, well, I turned on the VPN. I'm good. I'm like, no, you're not. It's going through a set level of servers between that. Like, sure, your connection point to your Wi-Fi is better, okay,
Mhm.
but you're still passing through who knows how many servers. And
Right.
so we have a high level of trust because of marketing that our information is good when the marketing is great, but we don't understand the actual total risk in between. And so there are rules about third party services that origination companies or servicer companies or non-depository retail lenders have to use, right? We have to validate and vet those parties. But they get breached, okay, their insurance covers it, but my data is still out there. I still have a loss, and that's hard.
Touching on that subject of, you mentioned VPN, you mentioned perceived security. People think they get some type of VPN software from a known place. I'm not going to name them, but there's a few out there that advertise. And one of the things we find, or one of the things is the unknown, is when you establish a VPN from your corporate computer to the back end of a business, it is a known corridor of communication. In other words, you know the roads that you're going to get there. It's safe. It's patrolled by police. It is, it's a safe corridor. But in regard to these VPN, you're installing software in your machine that's connecting your machine to a random place that you do not know. You're solely dependent upon that company's trustworthiness and their security to establish that other end of one, your traffic is secure, and then the other end is secure. What you're doing is just changing where you're logging in from, changing the place where you're at. It's not, and people think that creates security, but what you're doing is complicating the communication between you and the other place, and you're not adding security. You may be reducing your security posture in some cases, and I'm not saying in all cases. I'm just want to just make that public service announcement to say that.
Well, it's try to be harder to hack than the guy next to you, because the penetration testing and the throw it at the wall kind of mentality of hacking is find the easiest way in. Nobody
Yep.
wants to spend a lot of money trying to get your data if they can spend a little bit of money getting the guy next to your neighborhood, right? The most secure place, think of it in a physicality. My house is set back from the street. My locks are X. I've got cameras up on my property. If somebody's scouting me out, they're gonna be like, wow, that doesn't look as easy, especially if they look next door and go, their house is a little bit farther back from the street. They have no cameras, and
Yep.
gosh, the windows are always open. Okay, I'm gonna go over there and take what I can and not even worry about this house because that the risk reward ratio is off. So it's as business people and especially in mortgage and marketing, we think like, I want to try to find the lowest hanging fruit, and so do all the people that want my data. Like, so make it just a marginally heavier lift for them to penetrate my systems, and I'm probably going to be a little bit more secure.
Yeah.
What's that rule of the animal kingdom is never be the lowest, the slowest animal.
Yeah, never be the slowest in the most injured for sure.
Absolutely. So I think from that perspective, what are some of the things that keep you ahead of the herd? You said training, and I think that's a three-legged stool. I think the people, process, and technology still resonate in security, right? But the people, investing in your people. And sometimes I think training is one of the first things we see as a budget cut. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. Well, having launched a training company that deals with mortgage CE just this year, and of which Goliath is a part of that, and I appreciate you guys bringing your wisdom and voice into it. The idea is first of training is awareness, right?
Yep.
I think there's three E's in every training category: education, experience, and exposure. Right? These are the three things that you need to make sure your training covers. And again, having business partners in the military and one specifically being a Marine, you train like you fight. Why is it so hard in some of these areas of military coverage is that they train so that when they're in the midst of the fight, it just is more like, oh yeah, we handled this one already. We learned from our mistakes. Therefore, I'm moving forward actually with confidence because I've been in this scenario at least to a degree. And they learn what flexibility is, and they learn where their left and right lateral limits are, and they learn how to focus and adjust and overcome. And so when you think through that,
Mhm.
the training capacity, you say, hey, we need to do our cybersecurity training module this year, and everybody's eyes roll like, oh my gosh, because what is it? It's either a really boring voiceover PowerPoint
Mhm.
or just a PowerPoint and just a lot of words that I have to read through. And I don't understand how it's going to affect me because nobody's telling me a story. Nobody's helping me understand who I am in the journey and why it's important that I listen to this authority or this voice of wisdom telling me, hey, by the way, if you're not careful here, this is what's at risk. Uh, and so the training, you got to level it up. But I also agree with you. The ROI for training
Mhm.
is a long-term play. Training is insurance. It is not sales, right? When I train somebody, I'm actually affecting an insurance liability versus maybe getting more sales. What I am doing is I'm making my team part of my insurance plan, which is to be more aware, to understand the processes, to understand the click throughs of like, hey, I think I just saw something. I better say something to this team or send in this report. And it may be nothing. And I hope 99.9% of the time it's all like, wow, that was really good. Thank you for sending that in. That is nothing we need to worry about. You're golden. Right. But it's that you got to catch that 0.01% because that's the 0.01% that's going to cause you the most pain, kick you out of the business. You lose your business, you lose your job, like all the things can happen. Um,
But
but any, yeah, go
doesn't
ahead.
it put your people in a precarious position? Because like mortgage, real estate, that type of industry, you have to be a people person. You have to reach out to your customers. You have to give them that level of trust, that level of assurance that, hey, you're in good hands with me. I will take care of you through this transaction. We will make your dream come true. And get the house if you qualify. But now you're talking about, if you don't say something, then you have to balance that, right? I mean, it's like there's good behavior and a bad behavior. The good behavior is, yeah, report it. You're not being a snitch. You're not being paranoid or anything. This is your livelihood, and it's a mindset you're trying to reformat somebody's thinking, isn't it?
It is, but it's also in my world, in the mortgage and finance world, if whether it be Vetted VA, the group we started to support veterans and train professionals serving them, whether it be continuing education for loan officers that's NMLS approved so they can keep their license, or it's
Right.
running an actual brokerage. The reality is this: there's a lot of training, and there are more than one sets of rules that cover all of this. If I don't take AML BSA, so Anti-Money Laundering Bank Secrecy Act, okay?
Mm-hmm.
In that you have a suspicious activity report, a SAR. A SAR must be filed if at any time something seems suspicious, not is
Let's see.
wrong or is suspicious, but seems suspicious to the person. And they take a report and they file a report. It goes to their SAR specialist in that company. They cannot talk about it. It's part of the safe harbor rule. You cannot disclose that you filed this to anybody, but you may be asked by your SAR specialist in the company, hey, for more detail. But it's a very private chain. And then that's sent on to FinCEN. That is tracked by the CFPB, the FTC, the FCC, FinCEN, the OCC, right? The Office of the Comptroller of Currency. Like they all track these things because they're looking for reports that in and of itself is nothing. In a larger capacity, wow, we've gotten 17 reports about something around this area. We better look because now I have a hot spot.
Right.
And so when you take that kind of training and you correlate, hey, you're getting all this BSA AML training annually at least. Let's correlate that to cyber. And here's how this is why we're doing these reports. Now, I don't care if you talk to somebody like, I think I just got a fraudulent email. Okay, great. Let it go. But what we do is we use those reports to triangulate the actual problem that might be a penetration issue. You got pineapple, those Wi-Fi pineapples, right? Those were penetration testing if I've got a big company and everybody hops on the same internet in my office. You need those things, right? Or at the airport and you want to just steal people's stuff, whatever. A tool used for good is also used for bad more often than not.
Sure.
So you have these like devices that are defined and built for good, but are also modified for evil. Well, now we're working remotely so much, we have to change. Like, I can't just walk around with a pineapple to everybody's house and go, "Did you log out of the wrong Wi-Fi?" Like, I can tell if a different Wi-Fi shows up in my house. That's weird. Um, so as we move through the process, we tie our training into other trainings to help the learner understand the holistic approach to it. What you're learning over here is not completely different than what you learned over here. Tie them together because it's a thoughtful personhood change, not just a topical change.
Got it.
If you were going to change anything in your industry, let's just stick with mortgage.
Mhm.
What, from a cybersecurity perspective, what would you change? Is there like regulation? Is there, how people, you can't change people per se overnight, but you could change how, how they receive data, how they do it. And you're doing it in part. Was there anything else you would do? Make requirements, encourage people to use, etc. What else would you do? Cyber.
Yeah. Honestly, guys, I'd make the actual compliance to cyber issues less expensive. There is a big thing when you come to starting a business or operating a business, especially one that really modulates based on the flow of so many inputs like mortgage does. The cost of housing goes up, and the interest rate goes down, we all win. Oh, look, my thumbs up. Okay, good. But then you get the cost of like the interest rates go up and the housing prices go up, everything marginally comes down. And you're trying to manage a business. You're trying not to lay off a bunch of people and you're trying to make sure and then you're like looking over here going, and cyber is going to cost me how much this year?
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a way for us to make the barrier to entry to cyber awareness and management less expensive for the long term. Where the cyber, like I talked to some companies, before I talk to you guys, I appreciate the way you guys are approaching this. You're open, you're thoughtful to it. You understand that business models and different businesses are different. I, as a broker, am not the same as a regional retail non-depository lender that you're going to find advertising on the Super Bowl. Okay. Like I just don't have, honestly, I don't think I have the complexity of the bookkeeping to pay for it. I'm not sitting there putting in a ton of money into cyber because I'm trying to pay people that rely on us to provide for their family. So we have to find a marginal space in there with which to get compliant effectively. I don't care if there's more regulation. Regulation's regulation. Regulation is literally lines on the road telling me how I'm supposed to go and where I'm not supposed to drive. That's to help me go. You want to add more lines? Okay, just tell me how I'm supposed to abide by them. But I do not believe regulation equals compliance. I believe cost equals compliance. So keeping your cost in line with the marketplace really helps people to embrace the compliance and move forward. Now, why are we driving to the bottom dollar? Well, because everybody's driving to the bottom dollar. We don't want to go too low because then it's like, well, I paid my $5. Where's my $3 million contract like value? Well, that's not how that works. But I think when you're talking to business people who understand, they want to know what's the best thing I can do to keep my house as protected as possible and at least harder to break into than my neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a lifetime experience. Then it's a year by year. Hey, thank you for that. If my service provider Goliath, if you guys come back to me and go, hey, there were 37 phishing attempts and this and that we caught and stopped before, and we blocked you from this, and we calculate your potential loss would have been that. Whoa. Well, then my dollars and cents to you guys this year made me a lot of money back. And so I really want to keep doing that. So it's those are a couple things as a small brokerage that I would say are key to our compliance structure moving forward and how we manage this correctly.
It's interesting that you said, "Ooh, it made my money come back, my money back," because security traditionally has been viewed as
Cost.
just cost. It's just cost.
Or insurance, or insurance.
Or insurance.
Sure.
Right. Exactly right, Angelo. So that implies that we're bringing value back to you, which I appreciate, because for many years, the security mindset's always been, it's a cost, it's a cost. It really brings the ability to continue doing your business without interruption. And I don't think people appreciate the fact that those devices, those countermeasures that you put in place are there to keep you running and your lights on.
Right. Well, because when they're running properly, when everything is running as it should, I don't think about it. And so therefore I think, you know what, I could probably do without it because it apparently hasn't been used. I just paid for something that nobody's touched. It's like, hold on. That's not what a fence does. A fence is valuable because it is up and well maintained. And yes, you didn't have a breach because you have a well-maintained fence, but had you had a breach, this is what you could have lost. So I can come up with a couple different analogies, but let me just hit one. My wife hates spiders. Absolutely detests spiders.
I'm right there with you, pal. I am the murderer of all spiders.
That is 100% correct. Like, it is one of my greatest gifts to my wife as her husband of 22 years to be fast to the call or the scream with Kleenex and toilet paper or a vacuum, right? Like, that is it.
That's it.
So there is a point in time where I said, you know what? We need to get a bug spray service. I want to try to limit and put barriers around the house so that we stop getting so many bugs in the house. Let's stop it before it starts. And we paid for that for a couple of years. And it was like, I don't know, $150 a quarter or something. And somebody comes out there and they're literally out for 15 minutes. And I started questioning, what were they doing? Like, I'm paying like $600 a year for somebody to walk around and spray stuff on my eaves and around my windows and go like, put stuff in my yard. And I'm like, I still see a spider like now and then. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. And so, stuff gets tight in 2023. And so I'm like, I call them and go, hey, I need to discontinue my service. I appreciate it, but I'm going to, I just don't want to keep paying for it. Well, guys, it's springtime, and I've seen more spiders in my house this year so far, and I am actually really frustrated about that I'm starting to think about I probably need to call them back, because what I didn't see was the intrusion, because they were doing what they were supposed to do. And I didn't value what was being applied to my window because I wasn't being bugged by the bugs. Now I am, and I'm going, uh-oh, I might have made a bad call. Maybe I need them to come back.
And
So
interestingly enough, when you start the service again, they have to go down, do the knockdown first, and then the maintenance part, which the knockdown
correct.
is always more expensive.
It is. And it's just now you're back in the cycle, and you're like, oh man, if I only would have kept on with it, I wouldn't be bothered by all these bugs right now. And now I feel like I'm getting bothered again. So that's just a simple, but I think an appropriate and anecdotal analogy for kind of what it is to have cybersecurity and a good team with you. Like, yeah, it's not inexpensive to get set up. But once you're set up and you're like, wow, we haven't had any of name it here, right?
Right.
What I need to know, and here's the one thing that I think the bug company could have done better, and I think that Goliath could be a massive leader in, is to send me a report quarterly and saying, hey, we knowingly stopped or witnessed and put a block on this many incursions. And competitively or comparatively to the news, if these had gone through and seen themselves through this process, it would have cost you XYZ. Now I'm actually looking at the value set and going, oh gosh, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, you guys are definitely worth it. And look, my car insurance doesn't even do this. My fire insurance does it. My property insurance doesn't do it. I'm paying a few $1,000s every year for all these things, and I'm like, what do they get me? I have to have it legally, but okay, did my car insurance help me in any way? Did my fire insurance help me? No, they don't actually. They can't actually say that by having my fire insurance, it stopped my probability of fires. But you guys can say that. That's a market leading indicator that Goliath has that nobody else can do.
And one of the things that's traditionally hard with security and any of the insurance industries is determining the actual cost of what's going on. The issue at hand is you're subjectively applying a cost to something that didn't happen. And the only time you can actually apply a cost is if something bad happens. So you take the places where bad things happen and you determine their costs and make some assumptions based upon that. The issue at hand with that is it's not your environment. Right. So that's traditionally where people like myself struggle to quantify what is deemed to be acceptable levels of investment towards reduction of risk. That's what CISOs do. They invest in technologies to reduce risk to an acceptable level that a company will accept as an investment. So,
well, but look at your marketplace, and this is one of the key things about brokerages. I literally got off a call before this one this morning with Hammer Hilmer at Loan Original Success. He does like a daily call where he talks about the mortgage space and kind of what's happening in interest rates. And we're looking at the Japanese candlesticks. We are used to over-unders. It is why gambling is such a big thing with mortgage people, because their entire life is spent on looking at over-unders and margins. Mm-hmm. And so if y'all came in there and said, look, we can't guarantee you would have lost this money, but the over-under is about, right? Like it could have been between this and this based on this past historical data. We sit there and go, oh yeah, we get that because that looks like a Japanese candlestick. And I understand like where our risk is and I understand where the relevancy went. Now, if my risk goes down, you applied, a separate multi-factor authentication with a password keeper. You're not mandating like password changes every 90 days because human psychology says they're only going to change that password by one keystroke, and therefore it's easily hacked once the pattern is found. It's like, and you did those. Now your candlestick, your over under actually expanded. Like, okay, this is good stuff. I get that, but I understand. I mean, you guys you're data oriented, but factual. Data is facts. And so you're looking at facts. You're saying, well, this is what we saved you. And I'm going, I get you can't tell me exactly what that is, but I'm pretty sure you could tell me a number that would make me go, oh, okay, well, I am glad then, because I'm looking over here and there was a news release 6 months ago and that's what happened to that company. Okay. Yeah. I don't want to be that guy.
And who's setting the lines? Yeah. We're going that direction. I just diatribe. So
Well,
anyway,
I think of the the devices that car companies are putting under, or excuse me, insurance companies are asking you to
Mhm.
plug into their connectors in the cars to monitor your driving habits. I saw something from my insurance company about plugging something into the wall outlet of my house that monitors electrical currents to find potential areas for faults and stuff. And I can't help but think, one, that's great if the intent is to prevent something. But unfortunately, the insurance companies, when they ask you to do that, it's more from the place of, I told you so and you did it anyway, and so I'm not going to pay you. Right? It's like, oh, you plugged this in. We told you there's going to be an electrical fire with this outlet because it's faulty. Well, it looks fine on my wall. And for the past so many dozens and hundreds of years, the electrical current ran through that wall. It seemed fine. And now you're telling me there's a fault
Sure.
there, or maybe there's a circuit breaker that's going to trip or something, and it's a bad circuit breaker. And we start chasing metrics, I guess is the point, that are inconsequential to the actual remediation, right? Or the actual help for me to be able to be um, reducing my costs, reducing, maybe improving my driving habits, maybe finding the fault. The insurance companies are using that I think in odd ways where their underwriters are adjusting policies not to cover you.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And that's my concern of security metrics sometimes is they're
Hmm.
used in a bias that wasn't its intent. Right. So you talk about the candlesticks, you talk about giving me good feedback, but those same statistics, those same things can be used against you in the same argument. And that's kind of a dance that we have to
They
dance.
could, sure.
Yeah.
No. I'm give you yes, they could, because in the insurance world, there are men and women who sit there and calculate the value of the word but and in a contract, right? They literally try to come up with, if we put and, what is our risk category to that? But if we put but or however, conjunction junction makes a lot of sense right now when you start thinking about Schoolhouse Rock and you go, oh, those words are really important when it comes to contracts because
Right.
there's a value position to it. However, being in housing, I would welcome a structure like that with a set amount of time for me to limit the risk if they came in and plugged into all my outlets, because I know that an outlet at Lowe's may cost me $350, $5. Okay. I need to go like check that wire or have an electrician out for $150, but now you're going to tell me it's going to save me $500 to $600 a year on my annual premium. Okay. Like, I would prefer to do that. If I do the remediation and I send that in with I'm like, hey, I did these things, like, okay, great, you're covered. We're good.
Mhm.
So I think we could argue both ends of that, but I would say this to all of that. Right now in our world, data is the key element of value. It is what everybody's trying to hack us for. It's what everybody's trying to categorize and understand is data. Data is it. And so it is the number crunching money ball game of what we do. And so if I can get data from y'all telling me that here's what we stopped, here's where we are, here's where your risk is, here's what we analyze being a possible loss if this isn't mitigated, it allows me to sit there and to make a business decision. Can I take the risk or not? There are always, because nothing happens in a vacuum, unintended consequences of every action and decision we make. Always. Hopefully more positive unintended consequences than negative, but there are always. And so I could see there being a negative to this. I'd be hard pressed to be changed in my opinion that right now that would be a negative long term. I think that we would be more aware and take
Mhm.
more action to be more proactive in our security measures, which would be a positive until, you know, more until more risk analysis is done and we find out, oh, we didn't consider that thing over there. That's a risk now. Um, I took a class, this FBI Citizens Academy class, a number of years ago. I think it was 2007 or eight. There in the town I was living in, and they were talking about white collar crimes one night. And the guy says, "Hey, how many of you are told not to write down your passwords and keep them with you?" And everybody's like, "Yeah, I totally." He goes, "Look, write down your passwords and keep them in your safe in your house." And we're all like, "What? Why did an FBI agent just tell us to do that? That's weird. Why would we do that?" And he's like, "Look, if they break in your house and steal the passwords, you can take action to mitigate that risk online because it's going to take them a while to get that. But if they steal your passwords and they haven't broken in your house, what's your risk? Like, it's actually more detrimental that your passwords and your cybersecurity is hacked than it is that your house is broken into, because you're more likely to control where you live and sleep." And just thinking about that, thinking about what the locality and the closeness of our security and our cyber control, sometimes we pay a bill and we think it's done and we move on because there's something else to think about. And it's a positive, but to do that, you have to have a team that's helping you. Like Goliath, you've got to have somebody on your back that's like, "Oh, we got you over here. We're watching this. You guys are good."
Andrew said something a minute ago that struck me kind of interesting, and it was around the fact of, you know, they could use this against you, and I immediately went in a court of law, and I started thinking about how people collect data, and will we be required to, almost Mirandize the people before, it's like signing a EULA, but you have to, or they do more with cookies, let's say, now than they do with like your actual exchange of information online. If you catch what I'm saying, they spend more time talking about, oh, these cookies are, do you accept these? Do you feel that this, we feel this is important, that that we're having all this information. But a lot of people share stuff without a lot of knowledge as to where it's going. And again, I go back. I like to make cybersecurity simplistic, because if it's simplistic, and it's my little mantra thing I say, but it makes it so that everybody can understand what it is, what's going on, how it works, and then you can have a real idea as to, are you protected, are you not? And I think a lot of people try to draw protection from either product and or like a some type of we're guaranteed, but they don't understand that there's a lot of process and procedure that goes into information security, and that process and procedure is respective to understanding where things are, what you're sharing, how you're sharing it, and what you do with it. And that gets lost a lot of times. People don't understand that is extremely important to understand every aspect of those things, especially in a business, because you're dealing with probably customer data, and that customer data in and of itself will be critical to keeping your business going. So I just random thoughts by Angelo again. Sorry. So go from there.
No, I think that the key thing I think that I understand is data is the commodity, right? It always
Yes.
has been. It always has been.
Mm-hmm.
And you start seeing a lot of publicity on ransomware, right? Somebody exfiltrated your data. It was private information of somebody else's, most likely. It was something that is intellectual capital from your business, potentially. It is maybe transactional. Protecting your data when, and this is kind of wrapping in what the beginning part is, I have a VPN, I'm happy, I'm good. Really, that's the crunchy outside that's the wrapper of the candy bar, right? I mean, this is this is the stuff that the hacker wants is the actual candy bar. They don't care about the wrapper. So if they can get through the wrapper, they have an untainted candy bar, because it has not been opened up or whatever. And one of the things that we've been very, very impressed with is things called like tokenization, where you take the data and it basically ciphers it. kind of like the Enigma encryption of World War II lore, right? You have one box, you put a special combination of the tumblers, and you have to decode it appropriately. But anytime in between, it's just gobbledygook for anybody else who's either listening on the wire, seeing the bits going in the ether or the cloud. And if it's ransomware, it's meaningless because it's tokenized information. Um, but then you look at and you weigh this with the costs, right? Are we at the point where something like that is going to be mandated from, let's say, from associations where they're saying, look, if you want to be one of our associates, you have to have this security sandwich, right? Has these layers, has these things, these components, whatever it is. Are there baseline recommendations that are being mandated now that you see in your respective associations? Are we getting there?
It depends on the level and the complexity of the association, I think. Probably. I think the National Association of Real Estate Realtors, right, NAR, will have that more likely because they have a golden handcuff. You cannot call yourself a realtor unless you are a member of NAR. And to be a member, you must be in good standing and have all these items. There are some complexities to my knowledge that would probably require that. But I think more they just all turn in the lending space, I should say, they turn to both the federal and the state level of compliance structure. What FPC and the FCC have rules, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. There's a lot of regulation that an association doesn't even have to say it, because if they're doing it right, if the company is in good standing, they should be already actively working to that level of being compliant and structurally fit from their cyber structure. So I guess I could see it happening, but I think you're going to have it more in the state and federal regulation than anything else.
And arguably, I think finance and medical are one of the two highly regulated, almost overregulated things. But I think those industries have a lot to lose too. Right? Somebody's credentials, somebody's livelihood, or somebody's health or whatever. So I can see that it's not going to go away. It's just going to be, I think, stronger in its enforcement and its requirements. So
I think it would be one of those things that a state, having set up business in a few states, I would not be surprised that within the next 3 to 5 years, you have states saying, hey, if you're setting up business in our state, you must also prove this, at least certain level of maturity with cybersecurity issues or cyber protections. That would, to my mind, make up a lot of sense. Where a state has said, basically, we required you to have it, you proved you had it, just like they do. That, like, you gotta have business insurance, you gotta register all your stuff. Like, I could see them having a requirement in doing in our examinations, like, show us your cyber plan and how does this and where's your penetration testing and all these things. Right. The hard part is, but the good part is when a state has a requirement, a regulation that now mandates activity, you will have more competitors to the marketplace to provide that service. The bad news then is, how do I choose the right service provider that will actually do what will keep me compliant and not just be a fly-by-night place trying to take my money? And so now you have a market leading potential for like Goliath to be setting the stage right now. So when those things do happen, it's like, look, we've got the history and the bandwidth. Here's our success stories. We're good. We've been vetted. We've been working on this for a long time. Versus those that just kind of show up and go, yeah, I'm a cyber expert. Well, are you? Like, what does that look like? Because I know nothing. And so just telling me you've got a license, like, it's what I deal with all the time. People say I'm a loan officer, have been for years because I've got a 6-digit NMLS number. Personally speaking, I'm not nearly as competent in loan origination as some of the loan officers that work for Be My Neighbor. This is what they live and breathe, and they are so much more knowledgeable in certain product types that when it comes across my desk, I'm like, hey, I need to hand this over to one of my team members because they're going to handle it so much better. Even though I've been in the industry, quote, air quotes, right, a lot longer.
Right.
So these are the things that time tells over in vetting and opportunity to operate and a good record.
That's it. But I guess one of the things is proof, right? And this is kind of really tease it up for the last point that I'd love to pick your head on is testing, right? I mean, we say
Yeah.
that we're secure, but it really comes down to proving it, right? If I'm an insurance person, prove it. Prove it that you turned the water off. Prove it that that's not going to be water damage, right? Prove it that the electrical is correct. Make sure
Right.
that the permits are sound before I insure the building. The same holds true with data, and being a good steward of data is proving it. And so, do you find that people do test their security on a regular basis? Or is that a place that needs improvement?
I think it's a place that always needs improvement. Um, can you test enough? Can you train enough? Always. So Vetted VA, that organization we have that trains professionals serving the veteran community and active duty community using the VA home loan benefit, we've got our slogan is trust but verify. And so, it is exactly that. Our verification happens regularly and with a cadence. And so if this is how we should be operating our security measures within our companies regularly and with a cadence. This is what happens. It's growing up in school, public school child. I mean, it was what, every 2 months or so, it was a fire drill. Fire drill. Let's go. Like this is, we know what we're doing because we practice it so often.
Yeah.
We get away from that because we think I pay this service provider for this. Now, service provider, as paid for that, should now be mandating. Here's part of our plan with y'all. We're doing fire drills. We're doing penetration testing the third week of the month. We'll never tell you what day. It's a surprise issue. Here's what's going on. Okay, great. At least as a owner, I know that. And then when it happens, what are my active effects of follow up for the verification part? So I'm going to trust you. We're verifying through testing. We failed the test. That does not mean we are bad human beings. It does not mean we are failures in life. It means we have an area of opportunity for it to increase. Okay, here's what went wrong. Let's quick do a debrief. Bottom line up front, we could have lost this. We didn't because it was a test. Here's how we are aired on this. This is what we need to do going forward. And then just know that you will be tested on this again within the next 2 weeks. You do not know when it's going to happen. Okay, that's a secret shopper. Got it. Anybody in retail's had secret shoppers. Perfect. Guess what? If you don't come out with flying colors the next one, we'll go into another, opportunity for improvement, even a, PIP or whatever you want to call them from the
Sure.
HR world, right? Performance improvement plans or whatever. And like, look, if it now what you can find through testing is it's not a knowledge thing. Now it's a willingness issue. A willingness issue is something that now you move past from, okay,
Right.
we told you, we showed you, and
Mhm.
now you're still choosing not to do it. Now you're a liability to my company. Third or fourth time, look, this isn't changing. I'm going to have to let you go. But now
Yeah.
there's reason there. And I hate making it even sound callous, like we're just firing people because they're failing testing. But if your testing could kick you out of the company, like the business, if you got it wrong in a real life fire scenario, wouldn't you want your weakest link to be gone and replace them with somebody who's going to take that more seriously? This is what we do. Data doesn't lie to us. Educate, experience, that's testing, and exposure, that's real life. Like, let's make sure we have all three categorized and we're trust but verifying. And then we have an accountability plan when the verification shows we're still failing. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Love that. And in the cybersecurity world, we generally call those tabletop exercises.
Oh,
Basically,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. You were about to say
Nope. Oh, I
that?
was just, boy, you couldn't. Yeah, I'm glad you jumped in on that, because exactly right. Those are tabletop, aren't they?
Yep. And it just helps us understand where, what, and why, and what's broken, and how can we fix it. So all those things are important because, simply put, you got to know what's going to happen when the proverbial fecal matter hits the rotating object.
That's
So
exactly right. That's a family friendly, sir. Uh, so I guess with really the wrap up of this, first of all, thank you, Nathan, for this. We're kind of using up our runway here, but you really brought some good insight, some really refreshing thought into this podcast, specifically with your industry and what you're doing to help change it in a positive direction. So thank you for your efforts in that.
Yeah.
And certainly your insights were as spider killer and such.
We should start a society.
Well, that's
Yeah,
right.
well, yeah, I like that.
I think it was, if you remember Little Rascals, it was the He-Man Woman Haters Club, but now it's the He-Man Spider Hater Club, right? So
There you go. I'll
Little
take that one.
Rascals reconstituted into spider haters.
Yep.
So no offense to our arachnid loving friends, but they're creepy crawly and our wives don't like them, so they have to be gone. They are devoid in our house as well. So we always end up with the last part of our show, which is our favorite sayings. If they're security related, that's awesome. We spring that on our guests all the time.
It doesn't need to be security related, but we
no,
like it if it is.
It's a bonus if it is, but Angelo can start. Let's start with Angelo so you get a taste of what it is, and then if you have one that comes to mind, we welcome you to share it.
Sure.
Mine is a stolen quote that I utilize, and I really think it illustrates what things in cybersecurity, and I've already alluded to it, and that is complexity is the enemy of security. Reality is, if you can't explain it, you don't understand what's happening, even at a high level, you're probably not secure. You're probably in a state of what you think is secure, but things are not in place that really make a risk reduction in your organization. So complexity is the enemy of security. Now, given that, Nathan, I hand it to you. Why don't you throw one at us? Or whatever you want to throw at us. Not rocks.
Okay. I actually like, especially when you're breaking into markets and you're not sure, or you're first. And so I think about anybody who's going to run across this podcast and they're like, well, I'm not even in the mortgage industry. I think one thing we need to say clearly is that cyber issues are pretty much industry agnostic anymore. The question is what you're going to risk in your industry. But frankly, my automotive dealer, like the guy that changes my oil, has credit card information, has billing information, has my email address, has my phone number. He's got a lot of information on me, including the VIN number and my car, the date and the last date it was probably updated with the computer modules. So I don't care what you do, cybersecurity has to be a thought. It is industry agnostic at this point. It really is. And I think we have to get away from saying industry specifics. Now, there's small things about our industry that we might be more at risk than others, but holistically, we have to take that charge. So when you are the first in your industry that you know of trying to push forward, and I'm not the first, I'm not saying that at all, but saying that you're going to be maybe the unlikely voice of effort, or the one who's waving the flag going, y'all aren't paying attention, and I'm not getting money for telling you this. I'm trying to call it out. Like, there's a fire ahead, pay attention. That pulls me back to Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena, right? It is not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better, but the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by the dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best he knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Wow.
Like one of the most famous pullouts of that entire quote, citizenship in a republic. But I think it could be applied to anybody trying to do something new, or even just waving a flag like, this is really important. People pay attention. Even if they're wrong, but they got everybody to pay attention, they were right. And so the other quote that I would say that's probably even more apropos to everything about cybersecurity is from Star Wars. And it is this. It's a trap.
Akbar.
It's a swap.
Well, that
Andrew, before you begin,
yeah.
I think Nathan threw down a gauntlet, so I'm just throwing it out there.
Uh-oh. Are you going Star
What's
Wars?
it was you watched much further than any other guest, so I'm just letting you know.
There you go.
For
teachable
us,
moment.
and other guests, step it up. So.
The bar has been set. Oh, absolutely. So my quote is the best security device rests between our ears if we use it. So
Perfect.
either that or you can make things idiot proof, but you make a smarter idiot. So but I like it.
Why he always calls me an idiot. I don't understand every time.
No, I cast no stones. Thank you, Nathan, for your being a good sport and rolling with it. And love the Admiral Akbar quote and the one from Roosevelt as well. But really, your insights are I think we can call you a champion in that definition. You're a champion for security in not just the industry, but I think in insight as well. So it was good having you. So thank you for joining.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the invite and for the opportunity to share with y'all. And I'm glad to be working with you guys as well as a client. So thank you very much.
Awesome. And with that, we thank you for joining Cyber Insanity. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you again. Take care.